Hey everyone. I feel like this is turning into almost like a weekly podcast where I do my video, but it just works well and I'm kind of getting into the groove of it, so I really like it. I have a change of scenery today because I am hiding out in the conference room in district office after a meeting. I had full intentions of making a pretty background and doing this maybe in Canva so that I had something fancy, but I'm not. So um I'll just get right into it. So, this week we talked about elaboration or elaborative interrogation and interleaving. So, we're going to talk about how this is similar yet different but inclusive in some of the things that we've already talked about so far this year. So, elaboration is adding information. So it's happens a lot when the teacher would ask like how and why questions so that students are participating in retrieval to get the next pieces the of what they're learning and to bring out and to showcase their learning. I can't talk today, it's Friday. Um so I already used one of our buzzwords that we've already talked about this year, that is retrieval. Elaboration sounds a lot like retrieval because it actually creates opportunities for retrieval. So as students are elaborating or using elaborative interrogation, they are digging deep into their long-term memory to bring out some of that information for the purpose of elaboration to happen. I think that this is excellent for science. So, in the podcasts that we listened to and the articles, they talked about building a plane and the hows and whys that would make it fly. I also think that this is excellent for math. You know, I'm a former math teacher, so I can always connect everything to math. But because math is so sequential and because so many math concepts just build on each other, being able to use elaboration, the how and the why. Also, in the podcast, they gave the example of derivatives, finding a derivative and why and what does a derivative mean, causes the student to reach back into their long-term memory to retrieve that content, thus making it a more valuable learning experience. Um, Interleaving is similar to another topic that we've talked about. However, they are not exactly the same, and I'll explain that in a second. Interleaving is when you um, jumble, to use the words in one of the podcasts, to jumble up content, um, so that students, again, are going to reach into their long term memory and retrieve information. And it helps so that you're working on new material, but then you're going to maybe go over and you're going to do some old material. Um, and the reason why this is valuable is because in real life, problems are randomized. Um, so when students take standardized tests, problems are randomized. When they take chapter tests, it's randomized. So to use interleaving, where you're constantly bringing in new material, um, offers opportunities for retrieval and space practice. So, interleaving is not space practice. However, because it brings in old content to mix in with new content, it creates the opportunity for space practice to occur. When I was a math teacher for almost the entire, actually, it was for the entirety of my career, I would always have opportunities for students to practice old content because I always taught a course that ended in some kind of state test. But I also always taught a course that had a subsequent course come after it. So I knew that it was really important that it wasn't just a one and done, that information that they learned in eighth grade, ninth grade, pre-calculus, calculus was going to be needed in the next math course. So I would we called it spiraling, and I think it's kind of the same thing. I would spiral old problems with new problems or bell ringers. I think it offers a great opportunity for data-driven practice. So, you give a test and kids kind of stink on this question, this question, this question. You can now use interleaving to bring those concepts back in later assignments. Um, One thing that is important to note, I'm looking at my notes here, and I started this, is that don't use interleaving and don't interleave between content areas. So while I gave the example, so in math, you might be doing some, expressions, then equations, then maybe you can do some statistical things all in one assignment so that students are constantly utilizing space practice and retrieval, but don't do it between the content areas. So it doesn't, this interleaving does not work if you're going to do a few problems in math and then turn around and do a few problems in science. Stick math with math, science with science, and so on and so forth. Um, so interleaving just it allows opportunities to switch between concepts so that the practice is there, and students have the opportunity to demonstrate their learning. That's all I have for you today. Maybe next week, if I do a video, I can make it really jazzy for you. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll see you in the forum.